pointers which we have received for today's session is basically what is D&I in the context of workplaces? How do we create a more diverse and inclusive workplace, small or big, doesn't matter. And how should an HR leader in whatever capacity ensure that diverse teams, they're able to come together, start work together, and they're able to contribute together towards org's vision, mission, and objectives. And if we are diverse, and why should we be? What are the kind of benefits? And along with benefits, what are the kind of challenges which organizations may face, in this entire journey? Why is D&I needed? Do we need D&I at all? And how exactly do we go about having diverse workforce onboarded? Yeah. And what are the challenges which organization may face in doing so or are facing in doing so? And last but not the least, what are the kind of methods of creating collaborative atmosphere within the teams? Knowing that each one of us are unique, right? Belonging to different generation, age, gender, geography, and values. So thanks to you guys to help me with those pointers on which I've tried to put together the session for today. And I hope that I'm able to do justice around these topics. Yeah, but before we get started, little bit of warm up with all of you. And Peter, you'll have to help me with this. So here is a little question for all of you. Yeah. What does D&I mean to you in the workplace context? Okay.
So would request all the participants to kindly put in their answers in the chat box.
And when I started thinking, what are those possible themes? So I had some starters over here. Is it about philosophy? Is D&I a mindset? Is D&I a framework? Is D&I a mandate? Is D&I a set of policies? Is it the EBP of branding element to an organization? What is it exactly all about? So feel free to pick up, feel free to add on to these nuances. And we have 1 minute for this.
So we have Tushar who said it's a mindset. Dipti who also mentioned it to be a mindset. Sapna has shared that it means working equally and fair way, all working in essence of workplace.
Thank you so much for the lovely responses. Do we have more responses, Peter?
Yes, we do have them coming in, wherein we have Arol saying it's a culture to create an environment to maintain and work in. Then we have Preeti who mentioned about freedom to bring your whole self to work. Cultural mindset by Deepak. Sapna says it's a philosophy. We have Jayata who says that I think it should be a combination of everything mentioned in the slide.
Yeah, I'm so glad that all of us are thinking so deep around this topic, and the diversity of our responses indicate that, there is a little bit long way to go as far as D&I as a structure or a construct is concerned, which organizations can really put together and start running with it. So there's a connotation of work in progress still over there when we talk about things like D&I. So I guess we got a very beautiful response that it is somewhat an integration of all of these things, the way I look at it, right? Of course, there is a mandate angle to it at times for the right reasons. Then there's a framework. Organizations also put it across as EVP. There's a mindset, right? From the leader's mindset to people managers mindset to the minority communities mindset, majority communities mindset, the set of policies, yeah, the entire philosophy of inclusion, the way your culture is supporting or not supporting it. So it's basically an integrated view of all of these, right? But something which we need to keep in mind is it's definitely not an HR issue, which can be tackled in a very, very limited domain with HR leading, this initiative alone. As you read more and more about it, organizations are realizing that it's a strategic issue. Diversity and inclusion is a strategic issue. It's a strategic pillar. It should rather reflect and sit in your mission and the vision and your value system. Yeah, and the way you create a concrete plans and strategies. Similarly, there's a need that there's a DNI strategic plan, org-wide plan, and definitely moving it from ideology and philosophy to strategy to concrete and actionable steps on the ground vis-a-vis your vision on DNI. I think there was some request also around trying to understand what are the basic definitions. And I'm sure all of us are aware about the definitions, but in the interest of the larger group, and maybe we can spend half a minute over there in re-looking and refreshing ourselves on the definitions. Diversity, when we use that terminology, it is nothing but which makes you and me and the team and us different from each other, right? So any characteristics which makes us different from each other in an individual capacity or in a group capacity is something which we call as diversity. Yeah. Equity, hence, is the fairness. And in the first response also we heard someone say that it's all about DNI is all about fairness. So equity is about the fair treatment, about being able to give access and opportunity and advancement for all people, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. Yeah. In terms of inclusion, it is the act of creating environments or ecosystem in which every individual feels welcomed, feels respected, feels supported, and is participating. So diversity is having you, equity is giving you a fair chance, and inclusion is all about that environment and culture and the nuances which will, make the person participate. So make the diverse communities participate is all about inclusion. Talking about the org context, diversity, which hence will mean that we have a roadmap, we have an intentionality to deploy a diverse workforce. So we go and we're very consciously doing it. We are hiring people, employees with diverse background. When we say gender, religion, race, age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, education, and other characteristics or attributes. So that's diversity in the workplace for us. Similarly, the concept of inclusion at the workplace, it will go beyond, just having people from diverse background. It will be all about creating that mindset, the culture where we move ahead of these stereotypes and biases, stigmas associated, our own understanding goes in appreciating and understanding what different diverse groups bring to the table, what different attributes bring to the table, how all of us are able to contribute towards the org agenda by being diverse, by being able to contribute in a diverse manner and a divergent manner. Yeah. So with that definition, and I'm sure that we have read, we have discussed, we have deliberated a lot on the business case for diversity, inclusion, and equity as well. But let me put it very simply for you, my own understanding of it, and something which I put across in a very concise manner for our discussion today. When we say the case for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, we can look from three different lenses. Yeah. So there is a moral or the social justice case, right, that asserts that each person has a value to contribute, and that we must address barriers and historical factors that have led to unfair conditions for marginalized populations or minority community or groups. When I say minority, I'm saying that people who are not that represented well. Then there is an economic case to it, and all of this which I'm quoting is all research based. So now the economic case to diversity, inclusion, and equity is based on the idea that that they're able to tap into diverse talent pools are definitely more stronger, more efficient, they sustain longer. Yeah. In fact, economists, they see discrimination of any kind as economic inefficiency. And they have also researched and they have also put across numbers of the kind of annual losses you might incur, if the organization is not represented well, or if the organization is facing discrimination, subtly, knowingly, unknowingly. The third interesting case for DEI is the market case itself. So the organizations which are able to better serve customers should know customers from a different perspective. If they are not diverse, in all probability, they don't understand and they won't be able to deliver on the diverse customer base. So if the customer out there is diverse with diverse needs, thought process, mindset, if your organization is not diverse, you might be missing some of the nuances over there. So those are the three cases for EDI or DEI: the moral case, the economic case, the market case, and all of these cases are well researched. And there are loads of research which you can refer to from prominent names like McKinsey, Deloitte, CEB, Gartner, HBR, wherever you go. And a lot of correlation, lot of data uh, results which they have actually researched on, put across in form of article and research papers, that diverse workplaces are definitely high on sales, high on revenue, high on stock prices. Maybe it's all derivative of the three cases which we just looked at. Now, almost 2 decades of study of 200 odd Fortune 500 companies has shown very strong correlation when it comes to gender balance and profitability. So this is all about the business case and the rationale of why a workplace, small or big, agnostic of sector, agnostic of any business model, should be diverse, right? So all of us do understand that it is good to be diverse, but where are we? Where are we on this entire journey? So if you go and start reading about the topic, which I'm sure that you are doing, you'll see that the history of discussion around DNI and taking it very, very actively in a very, very structured manner, and organizations talking about it, and research and articles, etc., are not very, very oldish, right? You will see articles not more than 2 or 3 decades in terms of their age. But yes, a lot of effort is going on the DNI front. And if I have to really showcase what kind of efforts which organizations are taking, of course, they're doing a whole lot of training, and they're spending a lot of money in terms of around sensitization on diversity, inclusion, unconscious biases, and they're on around POSH, right? It definitely sits as an agenda in this for the CU as well. The POSH is taken very, very in a mandate, manner, and they're hiring mandates and so on and so forth. So these are some efforts which all I'm sure all of us have noticed and all of us are part of, definitely. And there's more to this as well. So we are seeing that the diversity leadership roles which were unheard of earlier. We never had a role like head of diversity or a director of diversity, but these roles are now coming into picture. The job post for diversity roles has gone 4 times in from 2015 to 2020, in the last 5 years itself. This I'm quoting from LinkedIn. The diversity roles are up 71% over the last 5 years. So there's a lot of action and a lot of efforts, and I'm sure we can add on to the effort slide over here. Now, there's something which I would like to talk about before I go into sharing with you what are these efforts actually translating into. Yeah. And how is it in organizations still? But before I do that, there's something which I really wanted to share all of you. So when organizations start practicing DNI or start creating their own roadmaps around DNI or their own philosophy around DNI, they start putting the blueprint around it. That different organizations have different ways of looking at it. That what are their expectations? What are their mandates around DNI? So organizations, what they generally do is they try and benchmark themselves against organizations, against frameworks which are well known and leading in this domain, because there's no other starting point for you, or you get into creating your own framework. So there are organizations who are creating their own frameworks, but there are a lot of organizations who are also kind of leveraging from the existing frameworks and models, so that they know that, boss, these are the kind of pillars, and let me start at least putting it all structured in this manner. So if there's something which you can really read about it, and all of you who are in this journey of strengthening your roadmaps and understanding this entire domain better. Now, if you even go to frameworks like, say, BCWI framework by Avatar and Working Mothers, you will see that they have tried to really break this blueprint and their lookouts in form of certain specifics. So they will generally gauge an organization around what is the women's recruitment, retention, advancement, what are they doing around that, you know, how flexible is your workplace, what are you doing actively to make it more flexible, what are the kind of programs and policies around benefits and work life integration, around safety, around security, around variety of leaves, that also has a connotation of flexibility. Then they will also try to gauge organizations from the point of view of career enablement and advancement for women. Yeah, here I'm talking about the gender diversity framework. Also in terms of the company's culture and management accountability. So what are the kind of forums where these issues get discussed, right? What is the kind of visibility? Is it only tokenism, or there's something real happening over there? Some real needle is moving over there in the organization. So we can, as organizations, we can benchmark against and study more about the organizations who are faring well on such framework and surveys. In fact, there's a forum which maybe you're aware of already, is about the World DNI Congress. So when this forum also looks at DNI, they look at from 3 different lenses, and they also have parameters defined around these. So if you go and visit the website, you'll get much more information around this. But they are looking at the practices of how are you faring and what are you doing and what is the philosophy, and how deeply your leadership is taking the agenda of disability, LGBTI inclusion, diversity and inclusion, right? So whichever way you go, either you go from an org's lens, or you go to any of these frameworks or forums in India or abroad, right? You will see that ultimately it is boiling down to 4 different things, 4 different pillars the way we understand. Key in your DNI domain, what is the representation? What is the breakup? In terms of gender diversity, in terms of minority community, in terms of generational diversity, in terms of PWD, LGBTQ. So what is a representation of a variety? What is that mix of your employee or workforce, right? How are you able to retain them? What are you doing to retain them actively? And next comes the another entire domain of progression. How are you ensuring that people who are from diverse backgrounds are actually progressing in your organization? It's not only about getting people, it's not only about retaining, but also growing them from junior management to middle management to senior management. And of course, the entire bit of effort around engagement. So in your organization, we can actually break the DNI framework or ecosystem in terms of understanding, in terms of self-assessing, in terms of putting up the framework before management around these 4 pillars, basically. Yeah. And there's if I talk about what are the some of the practices that they look like on those 4 pillars vis-a-vis the diverse community, vis-a-vis LGBTQ, working women, mothers, mat returnees, PWGs, and in general, So these are some of the small wins and practices which I've tried to capture from with the help of also some like-minded people in terms of what are the small wins which organizations have really benefited from. They actively doing it. They've actually implemented it. So I've just put it all together, but this is not. I must say this is not the. It's not an exhaustive list as such. I'm sure organizations are doing much more about it, but just coming from the framework perspective and the possibilities perspective, just translating into some concrete steps. So we see things like when we talk about working women, when we talk about mothers, when we talk about mat returnees, now organizations have gone a notch higher and more flexible when it comes to extension of leaves, the maternity leaves, the flexibility around work hours. A lot of organizations have gone the part-time arrangement route, childcare leave. So they don't call it maternity paternity anymore. They also call it childcare leaves, right? And work from home, which is, of course, it is in the new normal. It is a very different connotation. But yeah, organizations had a lot of flexibility for women working mothers. Organizations are actively engaged in the areas of counseling and training and mentoring through their own women role models, or they also go out and seek women role models. Flexibility in terms of giving the kind of roles which a women would want to do, or in some phases of their life, given that there are certain realities, right? And there's some specific phases. Also, in terms of childcare policies, organizations are reinventing, strengthening this entire domain so that they're able to retain, they're able to progress more women uh, to the higher levels in the organization. Similarly, a lot of other stuff around LGBTQ community, about people with disability or people with special abilities. Uh, these are all concrete actions which organizations are taking. And of course, if we look at cutting across the diverse groups, things like POSH awareness, things like um, unconscious biases training, in terms of really making people understand, employees understand from their normal routine that boss, we're dealing with people of different diverse backgrounds. And when you are in a how it is to really feel and be in a different domain other from you. So they also celebrate role models, right? Their gender, now they are also going the way of gender neutral policies. So a lot of organizations are taking this effort of doing away from paternity to maternity, to actually saying that it is a parental responsibility, and hence it's a parental leave, it's a caregiver leave, and it is not stereotyped to a father or a mother in that sense, women or a man in that sense. uh, in fact, there are a lot of organizations who are not only taking these efforts within their own ecosystem, but they have tried to integrate it to the suppliers as well. And their active dashboards which organizations have created, because all of us know that what gets measured gets improved, right? So quarterly, annually, monthly, whatever frequency they're looking at it, some of these parameters, they're actually dashboards which senior leaders are actively looking at, and that is also forming a basis for the kind of decisions they, or the mandates or the policies changes which they would like to do. Yeah, so we have seen those frameworks. We have seen that a lot of efforts are happening. We have seen some of the practices which I just quoted, and the list is not exhaustive in any manner. But where are we? What is this effort actually leading to? So let me quote some data points. In the last 2 or 3 decades, we are seeing 50% of middle management positions are held by women in the Fortune 500 companies. So that's heartening, and this is something which I have picked up from a research. Uh, but yes, the percentage of women advancing to senior management is low in the last 30 odd years. Now, the senior women executives in 1996 from this set of companies, Fortune 500 companies, stood at 14%. It has not moved leaps and bounds. It's moved by 1%, right, in 3 decades. And while India ranked 108th in the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index 2018, the latest version of the report for 2020, we have fallen to 112th position in India. Now, this puts it in the company of some of the worst performing nations on the issues of gender gap. And there are so many data pointers, right? So what I'm trying to say is the DNI, if I can say, it doesn't seem to work as expected, right? Commensurate to the talk, commensurate to the, the kind of discussions which we see on discussion forums, yeah, and the organizations taking a lot of effort around that. It's not actually leading to enhanced DNI, and there's so much more to be done. In fact, something which we should definitely carry away from today's session is there are instances when a labeling or a putting DNI very forcefully actually has been counterproductive, because we end up creating forums, right? We end up talking to women on gender issues. We end up creating DNI councils who are not represented very well. So they are themselves not diverse, right? So it at times ends up creating more communities and alienations, and people who are supposed to know and people who are supposed to participate and contribute are not represented in these forums, right? So it's a very noble intention that we would like to give some additional policies and benefits to say women, right? But sometimes these things become counterproductive as well. Yeah. DNI, if we can say, mostly it is still seen as hiring or compliance issue, right? So compliance in the form of your acts like maternity act or a posh acts, or more in terms of hiring. So we're at the stage of trying to enhance the representation. So the first stage which we saw on the other slide, it is yet to decide for the meaning and full potential of an inclusive workplace. So if we have started with representation, we have started with some policies and practices, knowing in our effort towards creating a more diverse ecosystem, a more supportive ecosystem, we are way far behind. There's a lot of interesting work to be still done in terms of realizing the full potential of an inclusive workplace. Now, that was a little bit of a monologue. So here comes the second question for all of you. So we saw all about the definition of diversity, inclusion, equity, the kind of efforts which is happening, the kind of initiatives, the kind of practices which I put across. I'm sure all of you also private to more practices than that. Uh, why there are still gaps in DNI initiatives and the results which we would have wanted? What are some of the reasons that the results are not that realized, not that well realized? So I would really like you to put up your responses in the chat window and help the group learn from each other's experience in terms of the gaps which we still see.
Please feel free to share your questions in the chat box. Okay, we have a response from Sapna. Lack of clarity in vision of leaders and organization itself.
You're bang on, Sapna. So while we are discussing a lot, what is the blueprint? What are the 5 things to be done? Where are we right now, and how we want to measure it, and how how fast we want to move on that? Those are some of the things which organizations at times are not able to really put it in that perspective.
The next response is management buy-in and employee sensitivity. That's from the unicorn people.
Absolutely.
We have a response from Unnati saying sometimes it's more of just fancy agenda, but lack of honest intent. Then we have from Shranga Dole, it can be difficult to change the mindset of people, so the initiatives may not have the intended effect. So we have a response from Jayata. She mentions the discrimination law in India are not strong at all. Unlike in countries like the US, France, Companies still ask for date of birth, marital status, gap in career, criminal criminal background. How are we going to be diverse if we have this kind of bias during hiring? During hiring, it is illegal to ask these questions outside India at the time of hiring.
Absolutely. So you're not going with the agenda in hand. You're not going with the yeah, the skills and competencies of whatever the experience per se, but you are going into multiple domains which may not, be necessary.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter which background the person is coming from. Whether there is a fitment to the role is something which ideally you would want to restrict yourself.
So rather than the more of skill metrics identification and matching, it's more of knowing the other aspects of gaps and other things between their career.
Yeah, so these are some of the things which I'm not picked up from any research per se, but quite intuitively, uh, why some of the $1 million spent on DNI training and coming up with mandates but not able to respect those mandates vis-a-vis gender, or doing those unconscious bias training but not being able to translate into any hiring decisions, or we still go back to the same set of questions and we're still heavily biased with stereotypes, with our own judgments, um, uh, uh, and are we doing enough on the infrastructural support if we have to really be that inclusive and that diverse in terms of LGBTQ, in terms of people with special disabilities, with abilities, and people from different diverse backgrounds? So are we doing enough in terms of infrastructural support? Are our people managers leading those initiatives wholeheartedly? Do they even understand you know the it in the real sense? Are they party to it? Are the senior leaders actually supportive of the initiatives, and are they considering it as strategic as any other strategic initiative which they're leading? Is it actually appealing to you logically? Is it actually appealing to you emotionally, that DNI is actually making sense for you? Or you're just going by tokenism because you see that organizations are their organizations who are doing measures around DNI, and where are you, and hence you're forced in some manner to do some catch up somewhere, right? But not leading it from the funds generally. And the people who are decision makers, are they involved? Are they taking those decisions? That are they actually putting in the best of the support, whether it is technology, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is money, whether it is budgets, whether it is taking those tough decisions on, when you see such a situation and incident happen, and not be incremental and not be, okay, let me hire 30 more and 20 more, but are you taking those really large costs and going all about it? So definitely there's so much more to be done, and these are some of the pointers where we are forced to think that why, when we're talking so much, when there's so many practices which we're seeing in many organizations take, but it's not coming all together in a very, very structured manner. So instead of getting into some set of activities that I'm doing two things from here, one thing from hiring, one thing from, I did some odd training somewhere, and I spoke to one people manager, and I had one Women's Day celebration. I have one washroom somewhere in some infrastructure. Is it all coming together in form of a blueprint? Yeah. Do you know your context in organization well? Are you able to sell that idea well? Are you able to define those actionable steps towards taking those bold decisions and really taking it as an opportunity? We need to self-reflect, and we need to have our own roadmap around it. Very beautifully put by an article in the Forbes. You can kind of read it in depth, but they have very beautifully and concisely summarized it, that why diversity programs generally fail, right? They're because of 5 reasons. Because there are some set of people who are driving it. You call it DNI council, you call it HR, you call it a group, who's so-called driving DNI in the organization. they at times met with more resistance that you can ever imagine, in terms of, because they're not able to position it in a manner in which it is required. So everyone has got their own stories around it, they have got their own perceptions around it, but it is not actually communicated well, and it meets a lot of resistance at times. And like someone just shared with us, improper implementation, where I can have a very beautiful deck, I can have a very beautiful benchmark practice, and I know it's going to work, but what about the implementation? Are we implementing it in small pockets? Do we know our organization, this is how to go about implementing it? What kind of resistance will we face, and what will we do? Who is going to support us, right? Where are those converts who are with us on the journey? So it's much more strategic than what we think. Implementation of a DNI agenda. It's actually a very huge cultural transformation and a change management of that nature, at that scale, that stature. We are inconsistent at times, right? So we're not very sure that today, if you're talking about unconscious bias training, what's our next agenda and why are we doing all of this and how all of these efforts come together? Often, there's also a lack of leadership buy-in. So not all your leaders are sold onto it. There might be one odd leader, there might be two odd leader who is sold onto an agenda like this, who really partnering with you and really supporting the org agenda in that manner. But at times we see that key stakeholders are not, they don't have a buy-in. It's not that they will come out resisting it in open, but yes, maybe they are spectators at times, and maybe they're neutral to this situation at times. It doesn't make a lot of difference to them. Last but not the least, the diversity label itself. So wherever we are using a label like a diversity, like we are using a maternity or paternity leave and not a child care leave, parental leave, that ways, wherever we come with a label, it becomes counterintuitive, because going going against the norm. You're trying to put it across in a different bucket. You're trying to create more moat and more silo around it, rather than being inclusive. So it's quite counterintuitive. You want to be inclusive, but you end up actually putting so many labels and mandates around it and policies which is for X and Y, that it becomes counterintuitive, and it is not met with the same support as we want from the organization, so that our DNI programs are world class. So as a group at M&M also, like, I think we really wanted to understand from our own women, how are they looking at this entire agenda of DNI, our own, really talking to them at length. So while research is all there and there are a lot of practices which we have benchmarked and whatnot, we really wanted to understand that, as an organization, we are doing A, B, C, D, E. And let us go and talk to women, what's going on in their mind around DNI efforts. So while I can't quote everything, but let me just share with you how we went about doing this FGD. So, women, to our mind, was not a single group, right? For sure, there can be multiple cohorts and personas, but yes, we restricted ourselves to through three different cohorts or groups under women. We spoke with working mothers with a one or more dependent child in a different FGD format, different set of questions. We spoke to women with who are single, no dependent child in a different forum, and we spoke with married women with no dependent child in another forum. So we really looked at even women differently, right? And when we sent out the invites, we were not very sure that how many women will actually turn out, but it was very assuring when we saw almost 90% of women actually being there with us and wholeheartedly contributing. So if I can give you some glimpse of the kind of questions or the inciting which we did with our own women, we really, because we have a whole lot of policies around gender diversity, and we really wanted to understand that how are women actually availing these policies, what are they availing, and are they finding it useful and enough. So we really spent time on that with the women. Now, given the life stage and the three cohorts which I spoke about, what are the policies and practice which they find missing and which will enable them to do better, engage better, right? And something which we really wanted to understand from them is the policies and practices which they are resonating with, they see out there in the world but not at Mahindra, and they would like to really quote with a rationale over there. And these are some of the concerns which our own women told us, right? And this is something live, this is something rich for us, which is very close home, that women at this time and age in an organization here they have concerns around the respect of work from home boundaries. So I'm just quoting the key statements around that, but of course they also it was a more in a dialogue manner, so they ended up explaining us more around it and their own rationale around it and their own experiences around it. But yeah, these are the highlights, right? Irrespective of whatever we are doing, the sense, the policies, they get translated through people managers. You can have good policies and you can have very good intent, but if the people manager is not able to bring it down to the workplace, right, it is not reaching the intended group. And that's where this entire we won't be able to progress from representation to retention to progression, right? We will fall off somewhere if they, and this is the kind of experience of bringing to your women. And they also end up giving us a lot of suggestions that, if you really want to do some actionable steps, which is going to work for us and not not only a token kind of activity, then let's get into some of those things. So while that was Closer Hope, that was an example and of the FGD which we had recently conducted with our own women. What I put together over here is a list, is the takeaways from a variety of research around the DNI roadmap. So you have to really attack DNI in your organization. What are the 6 things you'll have to touch upon? And look in your own context, create your action steps and your practices around that. So of course, this entire bit of org culture, right? You'll have to go deep into hiring and rejoining best practices. So what are you doing right now? What is doable? What are some of the good companies who are faring well on BCWI doing, right? And what will work in your context? Establish relationships and networks. So they say that for women or for any community in the organization, if they establish relationships and networks and they're able to lead, they're able to learn from each other's experience, learn from the role models. They have bouncing boards. They're able to at the right time get the right input in the form of a mentor. It makes a lot of difference to the group. Also enhance visibility of role model. See, what it all boils down is to telling the women or telling the group that yes, there are success cases. There are people like us, right in your organization, right in your own group, your own industry, who have made a success out of situations and challenges, right? People like you and me. So the role modeling and in this domain really works. Also, workplace flexibility, and we can talk a lot about it, but the idea is all of us understanding that in certain life stages or in certain form and format there is flexibility. Little bit of flexibility goes a long way, right? Translated of course through people managers beyond your policies. And also combination of the soft and the hard awards. So when you are rewarding and recognizing, it's not only monetary at times, but when you're giving women, supporting women with the right counseling, mentoring, women leadership development programs and developmental programs, right? Giving them those skill and ability capabilities and patching them up to the right mentors, it goes a long way. That is also a sheer reward and recognition. Of course, when we were doing this study for M&M, we ended up doing a lot of benchmark. We went to a lot of organizations. So these are some of the practices which we have captured from them. Very heartening to see that organizations are taking a route and they're touching upon all the topics which we ourselves heard from our women at Mahindra in terms of travel safety, in terms of leaves, in terms of flexibility around maternity. Yeah. Yes, so before kind of we end the session and go on to questions, something which I would really like to share with all of you, we will see a lot of practices. We will see a lot of things which are working for organizations. You go research route, you go practitioners route, you go benchmarking route, you talk to your own women. So there will be a lot of inputs which will come to you, right? But the idea is you will have to match it to your own context. So something which might be working in X context may not be working in your context, right? You talk to your stakeholders first. You look at your business, your culture first, right? And then you also look at where you are. What are some of the quick wins which you can really give to your organization, create that kind of believability. So it doesn't remain a paper exercise or only a wish list or only a strategy. You start doing things in smaller pockets, show some success, create some role models, and then you kind of also, you're able to scale it up in that manner and show much more results in times to come. Yeah, and this is the last slide actually. I think it all boils down to two fundamental shifts in the organization, which we need to bear in mind and take as a takeaway from today's session. Uh, First and foremost, who is the DNI torchbearer in the organization? Who is leading the DNI agenda, right? If it is only a set of DNI champs and only a set of people in HR, a very small group, who, and it is not actually sitting in your strategy roadmap, it is not actually being led by the seniors in the organization or the C-suite, it is possible that we'll end up talking a lot about it. We'll have very good intention. We will be taking a lot of set of activities, but it may not be, where we need to be or where we could have been as an organization. So if you're able to enroll the right kind of stakeholders, right from your CEOs, from your C-suite, talk about it, lead it from the front, along, of course, with the support of DNI team and champs and councils and HR, that's the kind of sweet spot. And whenever we are getting into a framework like this, let it not be a siloed approach. If we have to do a training on unconscious bias, let us not end up creating small groups where we're giving, sort of sessions only to identified population. In our own sessions, in our own demeanor, in our own efforts, let us be inclusive. Let us try to have this shared with more than generally we end up doing it. So we go and we start giving training only to women and certain things. Let us make it inclusive so that we don't end up creating those kind of silos.
What are the methods of creating collaborative atmosphere within the teams, considering and accepting the fact that each team members are influenced by the factors like generation, age, gender, geography, and values?
Thanks so much. And the question is quite interesting, but we don't have a simple solution or a set of recipe, for this. Why? Because it's something chronic, right? It's something which we have all not given due attention to, because our intention has been on anything but diversity inclusion. But now that it is catching a lot of importance and we understand the importance of it, we'll have to do it slowly. We will have to take some steps and we should not get disheartened about it. So let me not sound very preachy, but my idea was, any bit of effort which we are doing around unconscious bias or stereotypes, how many of us are even aware about what kind of biases we carry? Have we done enough in our organizations to talk about unconscious biases and stereotypes and a different kind of diversities which come along? I also myself wasn't aware being in HR, right? There's so much to diversity, you know, and sometimes even sensitization helps, can be a good starting point for all of us. And
Absolutely.
with sensitization, like I shared with you, getting more diverse workforce, getting the more diverse workforce can be one another way of starting it. Ensuring that we are doing a cohort based retention approach, so something which will appeal. So even when we are doing an FGD, I didn't go and start talking to all the women together. I know that even under women are under different life stages, right? So your approach to retention can be segmented, your approach to progression can also be segmented. What a woman needs coming from after maternity is very different from what you and me will need in a normal scheme of things, right? So be more sensitive, being able to identify where are those cohorts, what are those trigger pointers, what are we doing actively, right? A set of 10 things which we are doing actively and what is working for us. So even a good feedback mechanism helps us. We went to the women. We used to think that we have so many policies, right? And the policies, the way it was getting utilized via people managers, via some set of people in between, wasn't that great. We were ourselves left with a lot of shock. So have we taken dipstick, have we even spoken to people who are intended, for whom these policies are intended? We don't do that at times.
True, true.
So let's have personas, let's have segmented approach to retention and progression. Let's talk to people more often. Let us be very clear of our current context. What might work for a Mahindra may not work for, say, an Oyo. What work from Oyo may not work for me because our histories are different, our realities are different, our workforce composition is different. So it's like I said, for any strategy, for any marketing strategy, for any strategy, we need to understand where are we, It's similarly for a DNI strategy, we need to understand what's the starting point for us. And we can also treat this diverse workforce as our customers, right? And what will appeal to a customer? Why will the customer stay with you? How will the customer feel more inclusive and want to come back to a Mahindra and Mahindra? Those are the kind of things which we are dealing with.
Absolutely. It's all about also creating the same similar kind of a platform so that we can have those kind of potential that we can leverage, keeping in mind the kind of factors that are playing in each one's career at that given point of time. Well, this takes us to our next question that we have from we don't have the name of that participant, but yeah, how do we take stand for the politics in our workplace without being rude?
Yeah, so when we were talking, three of us were talking to our own women, right? It was a very cohesive group, and we were also like harmless people. We were talking to our women, and we were saying, "Hey, we have these policies. Please rate us on the policies." We were going very tactical and very technical, and the kind of responses when we started going, we were taken aback. We felt as if we are away from reality. We have put up a set of things which may not be working for us because we don't know how the experience is translating in that moment. So they did end up sharing some experiences, and it wasn't really pleasant, right? So what do you do in such a situation? The right people will have to take the right stand at those moments. If you let go and if you say boss ye chalta hai, and let me not take it head on, the one case will go to two case, three case, four case. Will become a norm. Then your policies will be very different from your reality. So any case which is registered, and are you taking active feedback? Do people know, do women know where they have to go to in such situations, right? And if they go, do they have a precedent of actions being taken in such situations? So you have to walk the talk. You have to really walk the talk, because you can't be saying different things and doing different things. You yourself know the result, right?
So, absolutely. With this, we do have questions that are coming in. We'll take this final question where one of our participants would want to know step by step, how exactly do we go about having this entire diverse workforce onboarded? What probable challenges an organization may face in doing so? So some kind of a step-by-step process that if you can just put in pointers.
Yeah, so it's not a very easy question. Step by step, like I said, there is so much which can be done, but it should appeal to your organization. So, see, I can give a generic response to a generic set of things. But if we do understand our organization well, we know that there are few things which matter over here. There are few pockets who will resist. What is the general level of inclusiveness, right? It just like अगर आप कोई body में कोई antibody डालते हो first time in a very harmonious set, you try to do something different, it is met with a lot of resistance, right? So
True.
you'll have to be wary of that. You'll have to be very careful that agar you're going to do some change like this, suddenly you have people and you're just hiring people from all walks of life. It's not going to end with hiring. Hiring can turn into attrition right away. You'll not be left with anything. So even hiring will not help you. Idea is, if you really want to be inclusive, you really want to hire, the plan should be foolproof. uh, Before hiring, so whatever you have to do in terms of policies and practices, I think should precede your hiring. You can't really hire and discover few things and and create that kind of experience for an organization, because even availability of senior leaders will go down. So first prepare your organization, then go ahead and hire, and then you can make those kind of claims to the new incumbents.